Good evening, listeners, and welcome to the Midnight Library. My name is Valentine, and I will be your narrator tonight. Today, we have a story from r/NoSleep, written by user reparadocs. My career in politics was the biggest mistake I ever made. When you see the news stories, you'll imagine that I am a heartless psychopath. But it was never supposed to go like this. I will be gone soon. I can't live with what I've done. I can't live with the contents of the box sitting next to me, and I can't stand another second of the muffled screams and sobs coming from the basement. But I must tell my side of the story, at the very least to warn others, so that they can avoid my mistakes. Let's skip past my perfectly average middle-class childhood, my promising early medical career, and the bureaucratic labyrinth that killed my father and drove me into politics. I have no doubt you'll be able to read a thorough accounting of those in many newspapers soon. They'll try to paint me as a heartless villain. And how could you miss the signs? Maybe they'll point to when I bullied Anthony Gerard in middle school, or when I seemed serenely calm the first time I watched someone die in the ER, or when I barely shed a tear at my father's funeral. Probably a combination of all of those and more. But the only part of my past that you need to know to understand why I did what I did is the beginning of my campaign. I was idealistic and full of hope, like many of us once were when we were young. Why was the government such a mess? If I could get elected, maybe I couldn't fix everything, but I could get the wheels moving. I could inspire people, and maybe one day get others who shared my values elected as well, and we could actually significantly change things for the better. That was the dream, and it was so close. The incumbent, in my eyes, was everything wrong with the government. Allegations of corruption had followed him since his first term in office. He spent more time rubbing elbows in Washington than paying attention to what his constituents desperately needed. Our district was dying, one plant closure at a time, while all he cared about was his political power growing. And yet, even with all of that, he was 10 points ahead in the polls with 3 months to go until the election. You need to understand, my future wasn't the only thing slipping away. The future of our district was hanging on the line. The only thing that could propel me ahead and ensure my win was a huge advertising push, in the range of millions of dollars. But no one was going to risk that kind of money on a no-name with an unproven record in an unimportant district. That's what I thought, anyway. So when he came knocking, it seemed like a gift from the universe. How utterly wrong I was. He came into my campaign office one Tuesday evening. He looked like a banker, slightly taller than average, wearing an expensive gray suit with a dark red tie. The only thing that I could tell you really differentiated him was his smile. It was a beautiful, charming smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. It was the smile of a predator, eyeing his next meal. He asked how much I needed to win the election, and I responded that I thought I could do it with $5 million. He asked how sure I was, and I said 90%. He slid a check for $7 million onto the table and asked if that could get me to 100%. I only stared and nodded dumbfoundedly. The deal was simple. In exchange for the money, I would simply have to vote the way my mysterious benefactor wanted, on a handful of bills in my first term. He promised that they would ask for my vote in no more than 10% of the motions that occurred, and that I could feel free to terminate the deal after the first term, as long as I didn't need his money for my re-election campaign, which he already promised to furnish. I know it sounds evil and hypocritical, the exact type of corruption I so passionately was campaigning against. But I was out of options. 90% of votes would still be mine, and I would be free of them from my second term onwards. My team made good use of the money, showcasing my platform and how it would help the district, attack ads on the incumbent, press events, rallies, everything you could think of. Finally, election night was upon us. The polls in the previous week showed us as the favorites, but it was going to be close. My team sat in front of the television with nervous anticipation as the votes came rolling in. Wave after wave of precinct results came in. I was ahead. Then he was. Then me again. On it went, for hours, until, with 95% of precincts counted, he had squeezed ahead by 2 points. There was no path to victory for me anymore. Tears were shed between my team and I, but we all went home knowing that we had tried our best. That's what I tried to tell him when he came to my office while I was packing up the next day. He just smiled. That same eerie smile. Day after tomorrow, Bill 1035 will come to a vote. As agreed in our deal, the vote from this district needs to be a yes, he said, still smiling. I can't control the vote. I lost the election, I tried to tell him. But he just shook his head and left my office without another word. It worried me. But what was I supposed to do? I finished packing up and returned home. 2 days later, I was sitting at home, polishing off a bottle of wine, in a moment of self-pity, when I heard a crash. 2 men, clad fully in black, rushed at me and held me down and clamped their hands down on my mouth to prevent me from screaming for help. My mysterious benefactor slowly entered the room with that same unnerving smile. Bill 1035 came to a vote today, and this district voted no. It seems like you don't remember the terms of our deal. So I suppose we'll just have to jog your memory. When you hear about torture, maybe you imagine knives, or fingernails being removed, or waterboarding. Strange, isn't it? That every method you know of is so old-fashioned. Medieval weapons, or some cloth and water, as if technology has never touched the field of torture. It has. Physically, my captors did next to nothing. Just 2 quick pinpricks as they put the electrodes near my temples. As it turns out, if you run electricity at just the right rate and in the right place, you can isolate pain receptors very easily. As my mysterious benefactor phrased it, I spent the next 6 hours remembering our deal in great and horrifying detail. As dawn broke, my captors plucked the electrodes off of me and left the room, leaving my mysterious benefactor staring at my dazed body drooling on the floor. Bill 1051 will come to a vote in approximately 2 weeks. As agreed in our deal, the vote from this district needs to be a no, he said, and then left my house. I thought through all my options. Lobbying, starting a protest against the bill, paying off the incumbent. But I didn't have the cash, and 2 weeks was too little time. So as ashamed as I am to admit it, I did the only thing I thought could force the incumbent to vote no. But it didn't work. He didn't believe me. Or maybe the message didn't get to him. And so my mysterious benefactor was back last night. And this time, before they put on the electrodes, they forced me to swallow a pill. At first I didn't know what it was, but slowly, over the course of the night, it dawned on me what it was doing. My mind wasn't processing time correctly. Minutes seemed like hours, and my night of torture seemed like a month or more. Can you imagine it? A month of non-stop pain. And perhaps you think you'd get used to it, get numb to it, but they had thought of that too. Clever bastards. The first hour would seem like a searing pain, a poker put in my eye. Then it would switch to a cutting feeling, as if I was lanced by thousands of large needles. And so on. It would alternate to a new type of pain, right when you'd started to get numb of the old one. At the end of it all, the mysterious benefactor still stood there, smiling. Bill 1065 will come to a vote in 4 days. As agreed in our deal, the vote from this district needs to be a yes, he said before leaving. I hope now you can see why I've done what I've done. I had to make sure the incumbent got the message this time. I had to make sure he knew I was serious. So the message this time will arrive in the box next to me. The box that contains his daughter's finger. Thank you, as always, for listening. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Have a good night.